Hello, I'm Joan Capurro, and it's my pleasure to host this segment of the Marin Women's Hall of Fame show. It is difficult to imagine Marin County without the work of countless women shaping the life, culture, mores, and landscape of Marin County. From a Frank Lloyd Wright designed civic center to high-quality public schools, artworks downtown in San Rafael, vast areas of open space, innovative businesses, and a robust network of nonprofits. Women have improved the lives of many in Marin County, and Marin women's contributions go beyond our county. Honorees have been in space, to the Arctic, created social changing films, served in the U.S. Senate, and helped integrate holistic medicine with Western medical practices. Since 1987, the Hall of Fame has inducted over 125 Marin women of distinction. And today it is my pleasure to introduce Bonnie Hough, who was inducted in 2013 as a founder. Welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you so much, Joan.
You're welcome. We're so glad to have you. So just tell us about where it started for you. What are some of the things that influenced you in your life as you became an adult, started work?
Well, I was really lucky to have come of age during the time of the women's movement, and I think there were so many more opportunities for me than for my sister, who's 15 years older than I, and certainly for my mother. And one of the things that I think I was very blessed with is that they both shared their stories, their experiences, besides being, wonderful parents.
Right.
But I just remember the opportunity of my sister was denied a job once because she was a woman, and hearing about that and thinking, wow, and I, things have really changed in so many ways, and I think that we're, as I say, I think I've been incredibly lucky as a result.
I have changed a lot. That's great that you recognize that too. Good for you. One of your early jobs was at YWCA Marin, where you served as program director. So just tell us a little bit about that time in your life.
Okay. Well, I moved to Marin in 1980. I worked for the census and became a secretary, actually, at an organization called Woman's Way, which was an early organization that was designed to help women with, as they often in times of transition. That organization was defunded within about a year of my working there, and we looked at what to do, whether we should close the organization or not. And my colleague Ann Kennedy and I decided with the board that we would keep on going. And since I'd been the secretary, I became the administrative director because I had typed grant proposals. I knew how to write grant proposals. And Ann had been the bookkeeper, and she became the financial person, and we just figured out sort of how to do it. And after about a year, we were in communication with the YWCA, and they agreed to take our projects on as part of the YW. I loved it. I was in graduate school doing public administration at the time, and to come into an organization that had all these procedures and policies and history and structure was just wonderful. And I came to love the YWCA. It was the goals of struggling for peace and justice, freedom and dignity, which was our mission, and the elimination of racism wherever it exists by any means necessary really spoke to me. I was honored to be part of that organization. So I really enjoyed it, and as part of that, had the opportunity to work within the women's community, which was very vibrant, with what was at that time the Marin Abused Women's Services, with the Rape Crisis Center, with Planned Parenthood, many other organizations. And we had a very vibrant group of people that really looked and tried to identify needs and tried to figure out how to do it. And that's many organizations and this Marin Women's Hall of Fame all came from that work.
We have a wonderful community that helps that come together. I know.
Yes.
I agree with you. And I love the YWCA too. It's taught me a lot. After that, you returned to school and earned a Juris Doctorate What attracted you to the law?
I had the opportunity when I first started in college of doing an internship with a senior citizens legal service. And I would go into senior communities and nursing homes, and people would tell me their problems. And I felt like it was a wonderful combination for me of my interest in helping people and listening to their stories, and then in being able to translate that into writing into some sort of legal framework to help them resolve their issues. And I had the sort of amazing opportunity of doing an administrative hearing at 17 of representing a client and winning. And that was really fun.
Yes.
Again, for me, it was sort of being treated as an adult at a time in my life when I was in that transitional point. I went to Mississippi. I did a 6-month internship with the ACLU in Mississippi, working on prison rights cases, on the death penalty issues, and just talking, answering the phone, talking to people who would call the ACLU. It was a pretty extraordinary experience coming from California. And then at one of the things that the Women's Way had that the YWCA took over was a clinic where we had this fabulous group of volunteer attorneys who came in and donated their time every Tuesday night. And people would come and they would spend about 15 minutes answering questions, providing information. And of all the programs, since I was doing evaluation of our programs, of all the things that you would think that people would call a YWCA about, the swimming pool, the hotel, whatever, they were calling for the legal clinic and they were calling for legal information. And I felt like I wanted, we had that Tuesday night, but what about all the rest of the time? That I wanted to do more and wanted to learn more. And I have to say though, even though I'd had that experience, you'd think, well, I might have thought about being a lawyer. Honestly, it never occurred to me that I could be a lawyer until I worked with those volunteer attorneys who were all women, who were all volunteering at Women's Way, and watched them and sort of thought, well, I guess I could do that too. And just, they were so gracious and so kind. So that was really what encouraged me to go to law school. And I was able, the YWCA was gracious enough to allow me to continue working in law school. So I was able to work 3 days a week and go to law school full time. So it was a busy time in my life, but it was also great. Law school isn't exactly a warm and supportive environment all the time.
That's right. Really.
So it was really helpful to be able to work at a great organization, feel like I was doing something for the community, and it also allowed me to come out of law school without debt, which enabled me to have many, many more options in terms of my legal career.
That is fabulous. Not many people come out of school without debt,
Right.
period.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and how about the teaching at Sonoma State University? You were executive director of the Family Law Center of Marin. I mean, elaborate a little bit on that part of your life,
Okay.
would you?
Well,
This is very interesting.
When from the YWCA, as I said, we did this evaluation. So many people were asking for assistance. And we said, 15 minutes is great, but it isn't really enough for many people. And the lawyers certainly felt that. So we met, again, with this group of mostly women coming together. And the Women's Commission, the Marin Women's Commission, had just done a study and indicated that legal issues were the second highest need that women had in the county. So we banded together and founded the what was called at the time the Family Law Center. Right. Now it's the Children and Family Law Center. So I was one of the founders of that during because my first year in law school, I was finishing my master's thesis. And so my master's was on doing all the incorporation papers and the articles of incorporation and personnel policies and all that kind of stuff for the Family Law Center. So we were able to do that. I worked for a small firm when I first came out of law school. I had a wonderful mentor who said, Bonnie, I know you love nonprofits, but maybe you should find out if you like the law before you graduate. So she hired me my last year of law school. I worked for her. And then we were able to finally get some funding for the Family Law Center for a full-time person for 6 months. And I sort of took I was writing the job description, doing all this stuff as a volunteer, and I thought, this is what I went to law school for. I'd love to do this. And the board was kind enough to hire me, and I loved it. I loved it. I spent 7 years as the lead attorney and the executive director. We were able to grow it to have 7 staff by the time I left. And we assisted over half the people in the county who were getting divorces at that time. Sometimes they had more assets, or there were other things where we could encourage them to find private counsel, but many people in this county really need assistance with low-cost family law help.
They do, and you know what, you were very young to be a founder and a leader in all this, but I can see that was part of that was almost like a college experience.
Yeah.
So that's what gave you the drive. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
One last thing about the work here is, you were the founder, executive director, and the lead attorney, not only for the Family Law Center, but as you met people at the Family Law Center, did you have a chance or an opportunity to encourage other women to go into law?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the things I'm actually proudest of is that most of the people who came and worked at the center as they came, for example, as a receptionist, we hired many bilingual staff. They all went on to law school.
Wonderful.
And we need bilingual attorneys so badly. And many of them, in fact, one of them is the family law facilitator for Marin County now. But yeah, no, it was a tremendous group of people, and feel very honored to have been able to work with them.
That is fabulous. I love that story of your work. Okay, I'd like to turn the clock back to 1987. That year, you were with 5 other women who founded the Marin Women's Hall of Fame. So, would love to hear that story. We're so happy you did this. And what brought it all together?
Well, I was at a meeting at the YWCA in San Francisco and heard about a project that the San Mateo Y was doing of a Hall of Fame for women. And it seemed like a fabulous idea, but it also seemed like an awful lot of work and beyond what our small group could do here in Marin. But we talked about it at the women's, our convening group, and the Marin Women's Commission was also interested in the project. So we banded together, and that's how we were able to accomplish it. It was much more than either one of us could do. So Ann Kennedy and I, who worked for the YWCA, worked with Pat Warren, who was with the Marin Women's Commission, Nancy Nakai, who was a consultant for them and a historian and was very interested. She was trying to write about the history of women in Marin, and there just wasn't much background, there wasn't much information. We knew there were remarkable women, but there wasn't much for her to work with. And then Ann Latta and Rita Levy were both on the commission. And so everyone banded together. And we met a lot, a lot of meetings, a lot of discussion. How would we put it together? Initially, I will say, I thought it would be a good fundraiser. We decided that we were going to focus really on honoring women initially. And got together, and it was, how do you create something like that? How reaching out, having community meetings, encouraging nominations. And in the early years, we had some feedback that, this wouldn't last for very long because we'd run out of women quite quickly. And it turned out, obviously, not to be the case. Here we are so many years later. And but I think the other thing that was great was that there was a commitment to honor women who were unsung in the community. So much of the work that really is done behind the scenes, and it's great to honor those people who are well known and well respected, but it's also so helpful to bring up and make sure that those people who are the worker bees are also recognized. So I think that was helpful. And also we had a commitment to really trying to honor those women, to always have a posthumous award.
That's wonderful.
Because again, there were many women who had passed on whose story had not been recorded and were incredibly influential. So Louise Boyd, who traveled to the Arctic, and what an amazing person.
In those days,
Yeah, and you read her history and think, wow, and how wonderful that was captured.
That's right.
And so many people. So it was a great honor, and we, I've done everything with the Hall of Fame in terms of, encouraging nominations and tallying up all the nominations for the selection committee to make a decision, and, schlepping things at the event, and that. Never chosen to be on the selection committee because I just always thought that would be too hard. But one of the other joys was we have had a kind of buddy system where when an honoree is inducted, that there's a person that they can communicate with and make sure
Yes.
that they understand what's happening and materials are together. And I was able to do that a lot in the early years, and I just loved it.
Yeah.
And I particularly remember Dr. Hallahan, who was not doing well at that point, Hallahan, excuse me.
Oh, yes.
I
remember
and
that.
people were, I was working in a law office at the time, and people would call me with their stories about what she had done for them and their lives, and what a great influence she'd been. And I would cry and cry
And
and
that,
cry.
but that helped you to train her and help her because,
Yes.
yeah, that's what
And
you
it
need. We
was-
need each other.
Yeah, and it was so special to hear
Yeah.
those stories and to recognize what a difference each of us can make
Yes.
for others. So it was really a great joy.
I know, and you know, it's funny when you said, "Do you think we would run out of women?" I don't think so.
No.
I don't think that's ever going to happen
No.
because we're busy mentoring women coming up in the business and nonprofits, and that makes such a huge difference. So I one time thought that might happen, that we'd run out, and then I realized how foolish that was. And now, what do you see going forward for the Women's Hall of Fame? Because if you were there in the beginning, you've been in the Hall of Fame. What do you see happening? What would you like to see happen?
Well, I think that it will be. It's wonderful, right?
Yes.
That it's continuing. That I think the honorees have been such a great influence in continuing to mentor and provide
Right.
assistance, and to just continue that message that there are so many opportunities for young women in the world. But I think back that if I, given the time I grew up and everything that it took me seeing women doing the type of job that I wanted to do, to internalize that I too could do it, it just points out the importance of having those kind of role models and those kinds of
Yes.
mentors, and the importance of recognizing the great work that has been done and honoring the people like you, truly remarkable women.
You know what you need. We need each other, and I think what I love about the Marin Women's Hall of Fame is now you feel a responsibility. If you're here, then you're responsible to help other women get here. And everything that I know, I learned from others.
Yes.
I love interviewing because I learned so much about people like yourself. And I know that they're going to do a lot more with Women's Hall of Fame. There's going to be more happening, more activity, more ways for us to tutor other women. So I'm looking
fabulous.
forward to that, and I'm so glad that the YWCA and Jane Winter they're leading the pack there.
Absolutely.
You know, there was one question I wanted to ask you about that I'd forgotten, and that's what is the administrative office of the courts, and what do you do there? Left that out. I'm sorry.
No problem at all. I am the managing attorney for a portion of the administrative office of the courts called the Center for Families, Children, and the Courts. So the administrative office of the courts is the body that sort of manages, to the extent that one can, the state court system.
That was a good comment.
Yeah. And it's we are sort of the staff arm to what's called the Judicial Council, which is the governing body. The Chief Justice is our chair, who happens to be a woman. Our Supreme Court is now majority women,
Yes.
which is quite remarkable,
Very moving.
and obviously in my lifetime. So we do things like rules and forms and try to help have the agency provides funding, that sort of thing. So my job is to try to help the courts meet the needs of people who can't afford attorneys. And it's a whole variety of things. So we, for example, have been able to have self-help centers now in every county in California, where there's an attorney that can help people understand the process. Facilitators are often the self-help program, but we have a fabulous program in Marin, really wonderful, that Kim Turner from the court executive officer and Judge Diopel and others started. It was really a wonderful effort. But we now have that in every county. Over 1 million people now get assistance every year from these self-help centers.
That is
And it helps people to understand how the court system works, how to prepare their forms, how to go ahead. Many people are really, articulate about their own case,
Right.
but it's hard to understand what the processes are, what the judge is going to care about, those kinds of issues. So we've done that. We provide judicial education. Those of us who went to law school were trained to speak in legalese. And often judges will come to the bench assuming that the people they're going to be seeing are represented. The reality is in family law now that 80% of the people who are getting divorces or otherwise involved in family law, domestic violence, child support, other cases, 80% don't have lawyers.
That's a high percentage.
And 10% of the cases, one party has an attorney and the other doesn't. And in only 10% of the cases do both parties have an attorney. So we have to sort of change the system to say the norm is that people don't have lawyers. So we've worked with judges, we've done research to find out what are effective ways of communication, what are effective ways to run a courtroom to help people manage in the system, and wrote a bench guide that's been nationally now is used throughout the country, which is great. It goes to every new judge in California just because it has a lot of tips and suggestions and information about how you can make sure that people have access to justice.
That's impressive because I think there's a lot of people that don't know that. I mean, I didn't really understand that. Do you work with other nonprofit groups that say legal aid in Marin, that kind
Absolutely.
of? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I was at an event there recently for them, and it's amazing what's out there for people who have that need. I'm not always sure they know about it.
Right.
But it's not because you don't try.
Right. Right. No, it's, we work obviously in partnership because the other reality is some people, sometimes you need a lawyer. Right? Sometimes, as I say, many people, I mean, it's sort of like medical care, right? People will say, well, you shouldn't do brain surgery on yourself. Of course not. No. But there are plenty of medical procedures that don't involve brain surgery. And so for those people that need that kind of assistance, thank goodness for places like Marin Legal Aid and other agencies. So part of my job is I provide funding, we distribute funding to those organizations. And we also have a pilot project right now that we're providing funding in cases where one side is traditionally represented and the other isn't, and trying to provide equal representation and looking to see what's the impact. And the hypothesis is it's probably better for everybody. I mean, those are very difficult cases, obviously. You don't want to be on the other side with an attorney on the other. And frankly, very hard for judges because that you feel that you want to be fair and you want to be reasonable. And they're not always easy for the lawyer, depending on the orientation. So that's sort of an interesting pilot project. But we also do things. We have a self-help website that has over 4,000 pages of information. With sort of step-by-step guide for all kinds of procedures that people are doing on their own. It's been fully translated into Spanish. We're adding a lot of videos, a lot of more e-content. And we're looking at a lot of ways that will help using technology appropriately. Provide interpreters in cases involving domestic violence and many family law cases, because if you go to court, you don't speak English and you don't have an attorney, you really have no access to the system. So again, tremendously important. So it's a great job because I get to, we identify problems. I was over to court today and went, oh, that's a really great idea. And so we can come back, and a lot of times I can say, well, can we use that and just make it applicable for the entire state, which is a great way. Certainly many of the materials on our website have been some very smart people out in the courts are coming up with these ideas, and then to say, no reason to reinvent the wheel, let's share it, let's make sure that it's available for people.
You have a lot of potential and power to help so many people. And I didn't realize you have all this. I hope that this helps everybody who's listening to this so that they know there is some place to go. And what about the people that do take that self-help? Are they able to come into court then and not have to have an attorney, or is it just to help? Is it just a guide for them?
I think it really varies. Again, it sort of depends on the person and what their situation is. But I think a lot of people are very able to do things on their own. What I found with the Family Law Center was that if we could help people with their paperwork and make sure that they came in understanding their case, but that their paperwork was in order, we had judges that would listen to them and would try to make sure that they understood what was going on, and I thought people did really very well. Obviously, but then you could tell with some people that they really needed more, or their situation was really very complex. And we were, for example, set up not to deal with situations where there was a lot of property. different rules regarding property. That makes sense to
Right.
hire an attorney. You want to know the tax
Yeah.
consequences. You want to know what's going on. But there are an awful lot of people, unfortunately, in our society who really don't have the resources to hire counsel. And so it's very important that we try to make sure that they're not precluded from the court system. And I'm honored to work for the California courts because we've had just such a tremendous commitment to increasing access to justice.
We're so lucky to have you. And you know, when you talked about the paperwork, I don't care what you're dealing with. Paperwork is always the problem. It's like, why are they asking that question? Or what, you know, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And you love your job. I can
do.
see that. That's fabulous.
I do.
And I'm so glad that you were one of the founders of the Women's Hall of Fame because it's this kind of feeling and passion that you have that really changes the world. And all of us have to do it in whatever little corner we're in, right?
Right.
It's
Exactly.
not about doing what the other person does. It's just
Exactly.
doing something that works for everybody.
Exactly.
It's wonderful to be in Northern California, Marin County, San Francisco. I feel like everybody's out there being socially responsible in businesses. And if there's any one problem, it's people knowing how great it is and knowing what you're doing. I mean, how do we get that out more? We need to do a longer program on you, I think. This has been wonderful. So I just want to thank you so much for what you've done.
It's my great pleasure. Thank you so much.
You are welcome, and thank you. And I think that I'm going to be coming to court just to learn how to fill out forms. So thanks,
go to the
Bonnie.
website.
Thank you for,
Thank you.
thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing
Thank
and
you.
your incredible life with us. And
Yeah,
thank
it's a
you,
pleasure.
viewers, for tuning in. The Marin Women's Hall of Fame is a project of the YWCA of San Francisco and Marin. If you'd like to learn more about the Hall of Fame and our honorees, please visit www.ywcasf-marin.org. Good evening.